Hello everyone and welcome to another video with me, 320 Sim Pilot. I'm a real-world airline pilot, and today in Microsoft Flight Simulator we are taking a look at the top Mach Studios B-2 Spirit. This is a really unique add-on and aeroplane of an amazing machine, and it is fantastic to see it arrive in Microsoft Flight Simulator. In this video we're going to take you through all the unique features of it, as well as take it for a flight and enjoy flying this marvellous machine around the skies. The B-2 Spirit is an advanced strategic heavy bomber, including a nuclear bomber, that was obviously developed by the United States during the Cold War. It was first produced in the 1980s through to, I believe, 2000. Only 21 were built, so it is a relatively rare machine to see in the skies, with a cost per airplane of well over $1 billion. So it is a bit controversial due to its high cost. The reason for that extra price is because of its stealth capabilities. It is of course a stealth heavy bomber, a very rare and unique machine. It has a special coating as well as a low profile for low radar signatures, special engine intakes and exhausts, as well as many other features that I'm sure we do not know about. The fly-by-wire control system is really unique given how it has to control a flying wing like this, which is unique in its way of being as unstable as possible in some ways. So it is a really fascinating airplane to get to try out in Microsoft Flight Simulator. And in today's video we'll take you through all of that, have a look at the flight control systems and also how it handles flying it around in the air. Lots of simulated features on this add-on include things like the weapons bays, the penetration mode for flying into enemy radar airspace, and some fantastic modelling of the exterior and interior. It is really remarkable to see. Of course, there are features in this that, or features of the real airplane that are not modelled, as it is classified in many areas still, as this is an in-service aircraft. But I think that you'll see throughout this video there are lots and lots of fun to be had with the features that are included. The silhouette alone is really remarkable. But don't be fooled, this is not in any way just an exterior model. There is an aeroplane living and breathing underneath this, and we'll see why in today's video. This is available through the Microsoft Flight Simulator Marketplace, but of course you can find the weapons won't be included if you buy it that way. However, you can get them for free from flightsim.to. They released a mod for that. So we'll do a full cold and dark startup and get the airplane in the air and fly it for a flight in Kansas. So here we have our B-2 Spirit. This one is Spirit of America. There's a few liveries included as we saw, but yeah, we have it sat here at Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri, and we're going to take a look around the exterior of the model just to give you an idea of what you get with this B-2 Spirit. And I've got to say, I am super impressed with the exterior. You're going to see it throughout the video today, but yeah, there's just so much to enjoy here. This is such a unique shape of an airplane, and it's endlessly fascinating to look at. And again, I always look for that silhouette, and they've certainly captured it here. From every angle, this looks just like you'd expect a B-2 Spirit to look. You get a lot of extra details as well. As you can see, this ground equipment all around the aircraft, this is all included in the package, and I think that's a really nice touch. Look at that, absolutely gorgeous from this angle. I love it. That's the shape of that wing. You just don't see anything else like it. But yeah, these munitions carts, you've got the chocks, you've got the fire extinguisher, ground power, all of this stuff is available through the EFP in the cockpit, which we'll see shortly. So I really like that. Just to give you an idea of the detail they're going for with this add-on. This is not by any means half-baked. This is a full-on add-on, and I really like it for that reason. As you go through the aircraft, you can see here we have the main landing gear looking nice, or sorry, the nose landing gear looking very nice and detailed. Remove before flight tags as well. These are an option you can add in the EFB, which is really great. And look at the detail they've gone to. Obviously, there's a limit to what can be acknowledged about this aircraft and what's public information. So it is a case of what public pictures are out there, and a combination of what is declassified that they can actually use. This theme continues as we move around the whole aircraft. They've really captured that sort of matte texture. The B-2 has a really interesting coating on it that we don't know anything about. It's a stealth coating of some variety, I would assume, but yeah, it's captured nicely all throughout the airplane. It doesn't look like other add-ons in that sense. The texture they've managed to achieve is very different, and you've got nice detailed main landing gear down here, which we'll see a bit later. Quite a unique setup to have those landing gear doors so close to the ground on takeoff and landing, but we'll see why that actually doesn't affect the B-2 in any negative way very shortly. As we move to the top, again, that matte texture really nicely captured, and I love it. I love it. You can see the different shines on different lines as well. So again, this is not half-baked. It is not just a grey color added to a model. It is really detailed. And look at those front windows as well, capturing the glare of the sun just spot on. And you've even got the little sensor report here showing it as well as we move through the camera. So overall, when you're flying this airplane, particularly in the sunshine, like all airplanes really in Microsoft Flight Simulator, it looks just absolutely stunning in the sun. And you've even got the different sort of metal textures on the nose here. What is that little port over here? I don't know. There's lots of this stuff that is just not familiar information to people who aren't involved in the project. And as we saw, it's incredibly secretive. This is an airplane that is not. It's still in operational service, it is still flying around, it is still incredibly advanced. An interesting part about this airplane, and a big deal when it was first shown to the public, was how the rear of the aircraft is functioning and how these engine exhausts work. Again, they've done a really nice job. If you see any top-down photos of the B-2, which are out in public now, you can see the interesting texture as the exhaust for the 4 engines, which I didn't fully appreciate. It has 4 engines, 2 on each side, but they run over these sort of mats or underplates, presumably to help with its stealth profile, but I don't know. You'll notice as well the flight controls are all drooping appropriately because the airplane is depowered. We have no hydraulics, and you'll see they are very big flight controls, and it has a lot of them. That's because it uses these all around its the rear of the aircraft to control it, because of course it doesn't have the same stability afforded to the conventional design as we see with this is a C5 over here with a normal tail fin at the back and so on for the normal stability. The wing does not get that luxury, so it has to have advanced fly-by-wire systems to help it out. It's got ailerons and elevators sort of mixed into these large control surfaces, and then the rudder is effectively done by these split ailerons at the wingtip edge, which, as you can see, the bottom half is drooping down, the top half is just resting in the neutral position. Again, nice detailing from Top Mach Studios here. Really impressed with it. Decals all throughout as well, looking nice, with lots of no step warnings. I imagine there's not many parts of this airplane you could walk on without causing some sort of expensive damage. And these are expensive airplanes, as we said, costing over $1 billion each, which is quite impressive. There's no way around it. Stunning though, an absolutely stunning visual model on the exterior. I have nothing to complain about. It's got the right shape, it's got fantastic textures, and it's got all the detail I could possibly ask for, especially for such a unique and interesting airplane. And as you step back, just perfect. And to get these ground equipment included, really nice touch. Very happy about that. And we'll see why that's extra fun when we load it into the hangar in just a moment for the flight today. So what we'll do is we'll load it into a hangar just to show you the full experience and get it powered up and started up for a flight from there. That way we can also show you the animations that they've included on the flight controls, the weapons bay doors, the air-to-air refueling, and all these other unique military-style features that we just don't usually see in our civilian aircraft. So let's take it for a flight. So let's go for our flight, and in this package we get the Top Mach B-2 Spirit, and here are all the liveries available. So there's only one version of the aircraft included because that's all there is. There's only 21 of these in that we know of anyway in operation, and you get all the liveries you could possibly want. They've included all of the I think pretty much all of the ones that you would expect to see around. So we have Spirit of America, Spirit of Arizona, New York, and so on. So yeah, I can't see you needing any more liveries. I'm sure someone's going to repaint it in all sorts of colors, but for now, that's what you get, and that's realistic, and I think that's great. That's what you'd want it to be able to provide. Then we're going to load it into, and if you see here, this is the Whiteman Air Force Base. So just move it so it's actually daylight there, and yeah, you can surprisingly see the top-down view has the hangars and some B-2 Spirits sitting on the ramp, but we're going to load it into one of the hangar spots. Now this is a freeware scenery that is provided by Top Mach Studios. I believe it's using original work by somebody else, and then it's all been worked on and with permissions and so on. So yeah, really nice, and you can load into parking in the hangar, which we'll do, and then you get the full experience. So let's do that. Here we are then. This is how it will load you cold and dark, and we are inside our hangar. Pretty cool. I like this a lot. It's a nice feature. And what we're going to do is just get the airplane powered up. Now, I am not a professional B-2 pilot by any means, so there are a lot of things I don't know about this airplane, but I'm going to take you just through what I've seen, having enjoyed using it so far. There is a detailed manual available on Top Mach Studios' website, which will cover things like how to follow the procedures and some checklists as well. But in today's video, I'm just going to show you how simply you can get the airplane up and running, and it's got a nice balance of complexity and simplicity, I think. Look at this really nice detailed Northrop pedals, because it is, of course, a Northrop aircraft. So yeah, really cool, something I haven't seen before. So what we need to do before we can get much going is we need to turn on the power systems. You'd of course normally run through your checklists to cover things like are the gears down and locked and all that sort of good stuff. But again, we're just going to get the airplane flying today. So we're going to turn on our batteries, which are over here. We have the flight control and the utility battery. So we turn those on. The DC one doesn't work at the moment. And that now powers up the airplane, and you'll see automatically triggers the hangar doors to open, which I absolutely love. And if you go outside, you'll see that both the front and rear doors open when you do that. I really like that. Interactive scenery, always good fun. Good, so that is now powered on, and we can power on our EFB. And over here, we can then adjust things like, do we want to have our ground power unit, our scaffolding on the outside of the airplane, the munitions carts, and so on, the ground tug. And that was what all the equipment we saw earlier on my little exterior walk around. But we don't want any of that, really. We want the airplane to be ready to go. So chocks are removed, the removable flight tags are out, and the munitions carts are all out the way. So the airplane is getting ready to be powered on and get underway. Good. You can also go into a map menu here, and if I turn this on, you get sort of like an extra map if you want some more situational awareness. But you can do that through the airplane, which we'll see shortly. Anyway, we're sitting on battery now, which isn't a great idea because, of course, we are draining the airplane's electrical systems. And if we go over to this MFD on the left, we can actually go to the electrical systems and see some of the voltage of the batteries in here. So let's get the APU up and running. And there's actually two on this airplane. So they are up on the overhead panel, and we're going to start the left APU. And as you'll see on the exterior, this opens a little flap here and generates a little flame and smoke. How cool is that? Again, another excellent detail. Powerful APUs by the looks of things. And we'll do the right one as well. Which opens up. And ignites. Awesome. That's why we wanted both the front and rear doors open. We're going to start firing up this airplane in here. Now, those APUs will come online shortly, and then that will give us, if we press status, we get back to the sort of main status page, we'll see left APU on, right APU on. So we have a bit of power now arriving into the airplane from the APU, and you can see here we've powered up more of the airplane systems. Great, good stuff. What we're also going to do is turn on this central display. This is quite an important one. It's called the SID. I'm not sure what that stands for. There we go. That turns on. I'm going to increase the brightness on these MFDs. Now, these are very military-style MFDs, something I've not used and I'm not particularly used to. So you have to bear with me, but they seem pretty intuitive. In the current setup, we've got the PFD, the MFD, or the nav display, then a sort of status electrical display, and then an engine display over here, which seems like quite a nice setup. But you can maneuver them all around as you wish. For example, over here, I can put this into be the horizontal display, or they call it a HSD, horizontal situation display. I would call it a nav display. And then you can adjust the range over here if you need to, which is quite good. And then if you press nav, you can get it as another PFD. Let's say this one broke, things like that. A common modern system to have completely interchangeable displays these days, which is a big advantage of electronic screens in flight decks. And remember, this is a 1980s airplane, or developed earlier than that, really. So let's put it back to where it was, status, goods, and let's have a quick look around the flight deck at what else we might want to do. So before we turn on the engines, we're going to want the generators to come online when we do. So we're going to turn on the engine generators now, so they're ready to go when we start up the engines, which will come very shortly. We're going to also make sure that we have the hatches closed. Now this is quite cool. Look at this entry hatch. You can open, and that is actually lowers the nose gear door here and drops this ladder down. Again, fantastic modelling. Look at the detail on the inside of this nose gear door, and out comes the entry steps. Really, really cool. So we can close that, get ourselves ready to go. I'm just going to leave that one off. I might put some lights on just to make it look nice for the video, although I think it's going to be pretty daylight out there. But you can see all the lights do work, which is nice. I love these B-2 fresheners up there. Excellent. And we've done our screens. Good stuff. We've got more lights down here, which you can increase, which you don't really need, but I do for my video. We get rid of this armrest so I can actually see what's going on down here. This is the alternate throttle system, which does seem to work. It has buttons to press, but let's arm our ejection seat, and we'll do the same for the co-pilots. So those are both armed, and what we're going to do, let's just turn up a few of these screens so I can actually have a look over. It can be handy just to peek over here. And we've got a master caution there from the crew alerting system, which is modelled and functional, which is really nice. I'm going to turn on the anti-skid just to get rid of that warning. And let's see, we've got parking brake on, we lost engine complaints, and we've got the APUs on, which is all fine as we would expect. So setting the QNH is great fun. You actually type in what you want. So, for example, I could type in 2998, say, and that appears on my PFD here, and then I press Barrow, and it sends it into the Barrow system. And then you'll see the altimeter reacts accordingly. I think it's quite low pressure today, so I'm going to actually let the simulator set that for me, and it will wind back to the correct altitude that we got here, about 800 feet up, which is good. But you'll see later that we can actually type in the altitudes for the commanding altitudes and so on through here as well. Good stuff. Now I'm going to turn on some of the cabin pack so we get some air conditioning. especially once the engines are running. That would be very useful. You can see we have enough fuel. We've got about 50% fuel load, so we've got total fuel load in here. Quite a complex fuel system, which I don't fully understand, but does seem to be functional. But yeah, I'm not going to fiddle too much with that right now. And also, I'm going to put on some lights on the exterior. So we'll put on the position lights. And if we jump outside, you'll see that these position lights actually cause little pop-ups on the wing. So we'll use those while we're not on a stealth mission sat here in the hangar and as we fly around. But we can actually see how all of these systems can be put into stealth mode later on, which is something they have modeled, which is, I think, really cool. Right, time to crack on with engine start. But just before we do that, let's just take a quick look at the navigation system. Now, this is going to look quite familiar to those of you coming from airliners like myself. This is effectively an FMS, although it has more features in it, such as the Autopilot control. So it is quite an interesting little box. But what I'm going to do is go to the flight plan page, and you can see here it's got the flight plan that I actually loaded into Microsoft Flight Simulator. I just said I want to go from our Whiteman Air Force Base to Kansas City International Airport, KMCI. So that is already in there. If I go to the nav page, you'll see it doesn't load the origin, but it doesn't really matter. There isn't much information for an Air Force base like this, but if we go to the nav page, I can see the destination. I can put in an arrival, so we'll do that later. But the point is, if you go to the flight plan tab, you could load in a normal flight plan via VORs and waypoints and then have the airplane fly that. We do actually have a straight line on our navigation display already, but you could of course load in a proper route should you want to do that via waypoints and so on. But we're just going to get the airplane up in the air, and then maybe we'll use that line a little bit later. So I'll put that back onto the autopilot menu. Good. Let's get the engine started. So what we're going to do is press the motor button on the overhead panel here, and we can do that for, I believe, all 4 of the engines at once. But yeah, we'll press motor and then engine start once it's at 20%. So let's motor the engines. We've got 2 APUs, so I would think they would be able to do this because you've got 1 APU for 2 engines, so should be able to do it. And as soon as we motor the engines, look at that, the hydraulics come to life because the engines are now turning and the flight controls move into their sort of resting position. 25%, sorry, 16%, 17%, there we go, we're getting there on the N2s. 20%, and now we'll do start. And the engines spring to life, and you'll get some nice sound effects as well. Really good audio on this airplane. They've got custom sounds to match for these engine types, as well as other things like the drag, the exterior drag from extra bits and so on. And we'll see all those little extra bits later on. Awesome. So something I haven't shown you yet, now that the engines are up and running, is that we actually do have some checklists. If you go to text on this SID page, you can see an interactive checklist system. Now, unfortunately, what isn't included is the inbuilt checklist system that will point you to the switches. And as a result, finding some of these switches can be a little bit tricky, but there is an excellent manual provided that has graphics and pictures of the switches you're looking for. So I haven't found it too difficult, but it's not the most intuitive flight deck compared to if you're coming from an airliner. It's a military aircraft. Things are different and located in slightly more random places. So we'll ignore that checklist and we'll go to this one, and let's do the engine start checklist, which we should have done. And as you can see here, notify ground crew, throttles to idle, then you press the start switches, 20% as we did, check engines, check sensors, generators on, check electrical system, turn off left and right APUs after final engine started. So generators are all on, we've got no generator warnings, we've got all the engines running, and if we go to the electrical page, you can see that the generators are all functioning. So I'm going to turn off the APUs now both engines have started. Stop, stop. Those are then shut down, and you can even hear them shut down. I really love the sounds. And their little flaps will close. There you go, the heat blur's gone, the flaps close. So many details on this, absolutely love it. Good stuff. And that's the end of that checklist. So next is the before taxi checklist. So store bay doors, check close. Now those doors are down below and they're actually accessed through here as well. If we go to weapon, bay doors, I can actually open them like that and you'll see them open here. Now you want these closed for taxi for obvious reasons, but there they go, animated with the baffles and everything, and we'll see them again in flight. So we'll make sure those are closed. There we go. And then you can tick each item. You see engine instruments check, hydraulic system check, so we can see the hydraulics if we go over here. It's in flight channel hydraulics, there we go. So you can see that the systems are here. They're all sitting there underneath. Navigation equipment, transponder, not going to worry, FMC, altimeter we've set, fuel we've got, and the CG. Now CG, I'm just going to leave in the normal mode. The CG is the center of gravity of the airplane, and it's a very important part of this aircraft. And we'll talk about why once we're in flight. But yeah, it's just due to the instability of a design of a flying wing compared to a conventional airplane. Concorde had a similar issue as well. Cabin pack switches left and right on. We'll just make sure those are on, so we will pressurize as we climb. Pitot static heat can go on as well. That is down here. Pitot static heat on. Wing anti-ice auto. Not entirely sure whether wing anti-ice is listed, but it's a lovely day, so... oh, here it is. Wing anti-ice. Windshield off. Engines. Not sure where the wing is. Won't worry too much. Windshield defog, engine, auxiliary, intake doors, auto. Now, this is an interesting one. The auxiliary doors, you may have seen, if you've seen a video of a B-2 taking off, that the engines don't always look like this. They actually have a bit of an issue where they can't get enough air for 4 engines for a high-powered takeoff. So you can actually run them open up these extra doors to get extra air. So engine auxiliary doors, auto, they now open up because we're on the ground, and they'll be open for takeoff as well. You can also force them closed. I'm not sure if you can hear that, but they do make a bit of a sound as well, but we'll see that later on. So I'm going to put them in the auto position, which means they'll be open, I believe, for the taxi out and the takeoff, and then they'll close as we accelerate and more air gets into the engines. Great. And that is the end of that checklist. And then you can see it ticks it off. Taxiing checklist. We're going to release the parking brake. I'm going to put on the taxi light on the nose gear. There we go. We've got already some of our position lights on. Do a brake check, and you can do a flight control check, and we'll look at the speed brake. Good. Right, let's get going. So, out we taxi. I've noticed that taxi can involve quite a lot of power, so let's get the parking brake released. There you go. And throttle up. And the airplane barely crawls forward, and we're not even that heavy. We haven't got much fuel on today, and we don't have many weapons either, but it still takes a bit of oomph to get going. And look at that, coming out to the sunshine, absolutely glorious. What a menacing sight that is. Fantastic. Such an awesome machine. Fantastic. Right, let's get ourselves over to the runway. Now, the B-2 flight control system is really, really quite something to behold. It is obviously a fly-by-wire aeroplane with pitch and bank limits because it's designed to keep the airplane functioning in its safe zone, as it were, and that's because it's going to be a particularly nasty airplane if it gets outside of that. It's not going to stall conventionally or anything like that, given its unique shape. Just bring the throttles back a bit. So if we look at the controls, I can actually see here the controls for the elevators and the wingtip sort of ruddery spoiler bit. So as I pull up on the stick, you see that we get full up, and if we go outside, there you go. So those inboard elevators move up and move down, along with the the appropriate top or bottom half of these outboard sort of aileron things. So that's pretty cool. And then same for the roll. Now you get these ailerons and the elevators working together, and then the same for these outboard split flaps. And the rudder is just done on the exterior, so they move like that. Now these are also used for the speed brakes. If I run the speed brake out, you'll see them extend fully. And they are quite big. I mean, this is quite a slippery airplane. You can see not much on it to cause drag. So we'll put those away. But they sit slightly open in their natural position because, of course, they use that drag to stabilize the airplane, to provide like a sort of rudder effect by having drag at the rear of the airplane. It's very, very clever stuff. But there you go. So yeah, ailerons. And if we have an aileron roll in like this and then we start moving, you can see that the elevators move accordingly in their, from a new central position. So a bit like elevons or tailerons in a fighter jet. But this is, in large respects, feels very similar to just operating around in an airliner. And this has been a particularly enjoyable military aircraft for me to take because I find it, little overhead panel, APU up here, start for the engines up there. This feels like flying a slightly retro airliner in some ways, although obviously much more sophisticated in many others. Lots of these buttons are functional, so you can tune your radios, your TACANs, you can mess around with ground power and so on over here. And like you see all our generators, if I turn off 2 generators, we get the caution, generator 3 and 4 off. The systems are underneath. In fact, if I go to the electrical page, what would happen? They'll turn them off. There you go, you get zero load on those generators, and then these two generators pick up the load. Look, 0.84, turn it back on, and then it all balances out. You know, it's there, it's good stuff. Our landing gear indicator down in green. So as I move the flight controls, you see those inboard bits there, and then you've got the outboard, and then we move the rudders, you can see the outboard sort of pincers. I like that a lot. Right, so taxi checklist is done. Let's run through the takeoff. Anti-collision lights go to both. Those are up here. So we'll put the anti-collision to both. Position lights steady. Landing lights on. So let's get the landing light on. Anti-skid is definitely on. That's over here. Let's make sure we don't go off the taxiway though. There we go. And we've got the IFF, helmet visors lower, and CAS message status checked. So we have, I'm not sure what all these messages mean, but yeah, I think the airplane will fly at least. Nothing amber showing. I absolutely love it. Look at the sun, like I was saying, on that above the airplane. Absolutely gorgeous. I'm so impressed with how they've managed to capture these big differences that make the B-2 so unique. And you can see here on the exterior of the wingtip, we've got our nav lights flashing and sticking out. I think that's really cool. Obviously not something that you'd have on when you fly into enemy airspace, but there we go. Right, lining up on the runway. It has, what I do like about this checklist as well, which sort of makes up for the missing inbuilt checklist, is that you can use it to see the actual procedures in the flight deck, which is quite handy. So let's get ourselves lined up. This airplane, by the way, can be very heavy. It has a phenomenal range, 6,000 nautical miles plus for running missions. So that is just huge. So it is an absolute beast of an airplane. So it can be very, very heavy at takeoff. So what we're going to do here, now no one has the performance information for this airplane, so I don't blame them. I don't believe there's a performance calculator. But what we're going to look at here is the takeoff procedure. So you hold it on the brakes, go to an intermediate thrust, check everything's all right, and then release the brakes, full throttle. So very much like an Airbus takeoff this. Engines check, acceleration and rotation speed check. And if you click on that, it takes you through between 125 and 145 knots. Now the airspeed is not on the tape, it's actually shown here. That's 4 knots, I believe that's just a headwind. And then you've got ground speed over here. This is our altimeter over here. It's a little bit sort of different way of displaying it, but there it is. If you get confused, you can always look down here and see your airspeed and your altitude. So rotate to between 8 and 10 degrees nose up. We're looking for 125 to 145 knots at full power. And that's it. And then we're going to climb away, and then we'll move on to the next part. Right, let's get this aeroplane moving. So, holding on the toe brakes, spooling up the engines, intermediate setting, check everything looks all right, which it does. Brakes released, full power, and away we go. And we're now going to keep the airplane straight with the rudders, as usual, looking out to the end. And we're just waiting for 125 to 145 knots. We're at middle weight, so I'm going to wait for sort of 135 knots, and then we'll rotate. Away we go. Look at that. Gorgeous. And look at the smoke out the back of it. All modelled. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. 120 knots. 135 knots. Rotating. See the angle of attack indicator coming to life. There's 10 degrees. Positive rate. Gear up. Up comes the gear. And you'll see that it's like flying a UFO, which it probably at one point some people thought it was. They saw it flying overhead. But it is so stable because of those this sort of inbuilt fly-by-wire system. And that's it. Tacked away. No blemishes on it. Especially once we get rid of our nav lights and those engine doors. And you can just leave it now. Now it's complaining because I've overheated the engine, so let's just throttle back a bit just to get those into control. We'll get rid of our taxi and landing lights, now we're in the air. And I haven't turned on the ECS system properly. So this is good actually. It shows you this warning system's working. It says ECS, I think it's the environmental control system. Anyway, bleed left and bleed right. We haven't turned on the bleed airs, which we needed to do down here. So we turn those on. And now those messages have cleared. And I could have seen that if I went to ECS, and you'd see whether now we've got airflow and temperatures and so on showing CAS OK. So all good. Thank you, airplane, for telling me. We love an airplane that looks out for us like that. Now we're already doing 300 knots as we pass through 5,000 feet, and we'll soon see how powerful this airplane is. It can go, we know it can go, I believe 50,000 feet is accepted, but who knows what it can actually fly at. It's got 4 engines. It's going to be a pretty impressive performance envelope, I'm sure. So we're only just off the stops for power. If I now raise the nose to 10 degrees and then leave it there, you'll see that the airplane just holds that pitch perfectly. It is ultra stable. What a privilege to be able to even get a taste of what this airplane might be like in the air. And look at that. Our VS is over here for some reason. We're doing 5,600 feet per minute. Speed is gently washing off, but we're going to rocket through 10,000 feet. And I've taken this plane at this weight, so about 50% fuel, not much weight in it, and it shoots up to 50,000 feet in flight sim. Through 40,000 feet, no trouble at all. So yeah, absolutely fantastic. Now, there's no autopilot engaged at the moment, just to remind you, but it's completely steady because it's a rock-solid fly-by-wire system. Look at that texturing. Amazing. So let's now show you the handling. I'm just going to lower the nose just above 10,000 feet, bring the power back a little bit, hold it around 260 knots. Rock-solid, like I say. This couldn't be easier to fly. It's a point-and-shoot airplane, as it were. Now let's try out a little bit of the roll. So if I bank the wings to the left, it's surprisingly responsive, and it doesn't entirely stop the dropping of the nose. So you do need to do a little bit of pulling back, but there's no trimming. It is all auto trim. So now we can come around the corner, all pretty straightforward. But you'll see here, I can't overbank the airplane. It has a limiter in it, just like the Airbus. So I'm still moving the stick to the full left, and it just won't have it. Likewise, if we roll it to the right, let's just bring the power back a bit before we overspeed, pull the nose up. And you do hear wind and drag noises. By the way, notice those engine auxiliary doors have closed now. We've got enough airflow through the engines. Sorry, back here I think they were. Likewise to the right, you can roll it round, and it will stop you from over-rolling the airplane. Now it does let you go slightly past upright, which is quite cool. It is a military airplane after all. We might need it at some point, I suppose. Now, we're at 370 knots, so we're very fast. If I pull the nose up... By the way, check this out. If you pull the nose up hard enough, sometimes you get the vapour on top of the fuselage. Look at that. I say fuselage, the wing that it is. I think that's really cool. And there's maximum nose up, and it holds the bank there. Sorry, the pitch there. It won't let us overdo it. And likewise, if we nose down, we'll try and be a little bit gentle. I'm not sure. Is that a G meter there? That could be a G meter. Yeah, so we don't want to over G it. About 45 degrees nose down, and it won't let me do any more. If I go full back stick, yeah, there we go. Look, G force, and it's at 2, goes over 2G. So you do know you're in a military airplane. The Airbus will show you the G force, but only if you reach the extremes. There we go. Right, what else did I want to show you? So we're flying along, and we haven't used the autopilot yet. So let's put in the autopilot, and then I can show you some of the military things. Although actually, let's try and install it first. So we'll full back stick, and it's full idle throttles. Now it's an incredibly responsive speed brake on this airplane. So let's run the speed brake out, and it's like hitting a wall. Out the speed brakes are, and you'll notice that now as I move the flight controls, see how the speed brake even moves with the flight controls, just gently. They move accordingly. Now it's kind of been very easy to program. I'm very impressed with the flight control movements and animations, because it all seems to be, look at that, you can see the speed brake moving up and down on the edge of the wings. If I move them 50%, it might be more obvious. Look at that. How cool is that? See those auxiliary doors open up as well as we come into low speed. So I'm going to put the speed brakes away now, nice and slow, and then just full nose up, and you'll see that it basically has a stick pusher. Although, I think this is full back stick. No, it's going to let me stall it. That's through 40 knots. See if we can get the nose down quick enough. Get some power on. There's no pitch power couple, so there's no disadvantage to having power on in this airplane. Get the nose down. Keep the power on. 160 knots. We're flying again. Okay, lesson for me then. Although it has a stick pusher, it is still possible to stall it. 230 knots. We're in a good place. Now, there's no flaps in this airplane for low speed. It doesn't need them. It's a wing. It's not likely to... It can slow down just by raising the nose, and it doesn't suffer from stalls in the same way as higher aspect ratio wings can do. So these delta wing configurations can be quite good at high angles of attack. That's why you see them used in fighter jets, so they can fly sharp turns without having to use flaps. But there we go. Good stuff, 230 knots. Right, let's get the autopilot engaged and show you how that can be used, which is a really handy feature. To use Autopilot, you can go into this Autopilot menu and you have the master switch, and then you have your auto throttle switch and your navigation source. So, let's say I want it to fly my current heading. I'm going to engage the master switch and then press heading lock. And now it's going to fly heading 165, which is straight ahead. That's what we were already on. And now the airplane is flying the heading, but you'll notice I'm controlling the pitch. So we're doing 6,000, we're at 6,300 feet. We're doing sort of a rough descent. Let's add a bit of power. So what I can do is if I go back to the Autopilot menu, PRFM, and then I can go to the altitude button and press outlock. And there you go, out 6,000, which is what we were at when I pressed it. So now the airplane is going to fly the altitude. And lo and behold, we're in Autopilot, and it's flying a heading of 165, and it's going to climb back to 6,000 feet. Finally, the speed, we're doing 240 knots. I can tell it to do a speed. If I go PRFM, auto throttle, now that's engaged because it's in brackets, and then speeds, and it's targeting 250 knots. There we go. So now we have a fully automatic airplane flying at 6,000 feet. This is just to show you that you can actually use this for some long flights, and you could fly this. I'd quite happily fly this airplane around on VATSIM. It's a little bit clunky and more difficult than it could be because of the way the system is through here. But you can also do things over here. Now, I haven't tried this yet, but I think if I change the commanded altitude, let's put 8,000. In fact, let's go up to 20,000. See, 20,000 typed in there, and then I press command altitude over here, and up it goes. And now the throttles will counteract. Just keep 250 knots. But what vertical mode is it using? I don't actually know. You can see that it has an outlock mode armed. I'm not sure whether it's climbing based on just keeping the 250 knots airspeed and max and climb thrust. I think it might be. But you can also, the 20,000's in there, but I can command the vertical speed. Let's say I want it to climb at 2,000 feet per minute. Just type that in, and then press VS lock. So now it will still level off at 20,000, but it will climb at 2,000 feet per minute until it gets there, and the auto throttle system will keep our 250 knots. So I wonder, yeah, I have a funny feeling that if I just commanded 25,000, it will do it at max climb thrust. No, it's keeping it in VS. Anyway, there we go. So if I press outlock, levels off at 8,400. That's totally fine. What we can also do is change the heading. So in the heading option, I can just type in the heading I want, 250, and plunk it in there. And the airplane will now roll to that heading. So this is all with the autopilot. So you can see, you could quite easily, if you have this page up, just type in what air traffic control tells you, or you can do it a bit over here. I'm not entirely sure how all these features work. I think you can actually change your course and heading over here. So we're commanding 250, see the C250, and then I can actually change that with this dial here and scroll through the heading. So this is like your heading bug. Now we also have our nav line, didn't we? If we zoom out, we can see that our nav route was over here. So if we fly heading 330, what we can do, I like being able to type it in actually, it's a lot easier than some of the things we've been doing. Now we'll fly and we can then intercept that line and just fly it as a nav line, because I can do nav lock as a source. And then later on we can fly the approach. Good. Now let's take the airplane up to 10,000 feet. Please, airplane. There's our little 10,000 in the window there. Although it's doing the opposite, so I've obviously typed in Something wrong there, so we'll go to back to out, VS lock, 2500. There we go. Okay, and up we go. So we've reinset that line, and let's increase the speed now as well. I think we can go a bit faster than this. This is quite a high-speed airplane, although it is subsonic. Let's do 330 knots. It will not go supersonic. It's not designed to, as far as we know anyway. Although it looks like it certainly could. So we're getting that power on. The airplane is coming to life now. It doesn't really want to be flying around in this thick, low-level air. You can see that from the design. It wants to be higher up. However, it does have some interesting features. Let's look at some of the military sides of this airplane then. So look at this. We have a horizontal situation display, as we saw, but we also had in there the terrain following radar. Now this is done, they've done it more like a, I think it's an infrared screen, because they don't actually know what this system does in the real aircraft. Of course, there are lots of secrets about this airplane. But there we go. So you have that feature, which if you got fun flying along in IMC or clouds, or in particular at night, I believe is when it would be used. I really have no idea. But there we go. So yeah, this is just their implementation of it. It's just something to have, which I think is quite a nice idea, really. Right. We're now heading up towards our line. We're doing 330 knots, no trouble at all. Let's go and get some performance out of this airplane. Let's climb it up. I think we can go a bit higher than this. 40,000, and I reckon we could get there at easily do 3,500 feet per minute to start with. Up we go. Lots of energy. Now, some other features would be that if you're in the right window, you can actually do air-to-air refueling. So, to open that, we come to our panel here, and then I can open the air-to-air refueling. Now, I'm not sure if we're too fast for it right now. No, there it is. And it rotates. How cool is that on the overheads? That's how the airplane can refuel. But again, they don't want any things that could give away the airplane to radar. Very cool. So we'll close that off. Again, more nice texturing on that, and then lovely animation as it opens and closes. Next, remember we've got our little lights out over here. We don't want those, so I can remove those to get us into true stealth mode. So we'll turn off the collisions, off the positions, into the retract position. There we go. And now we're in a relatively clean airplane. Look at that. Now it has a mode called penetration mode, which is used for penetrating enemy radar airspace. That's over here. If you press it, you get the notice there. And what this does is it actually removes the roll authority from the airplane. So I disconnect the autopilot now. You'll see that as I move the stick, I'm actually commanding left and right, but it's not moving any flight controls. The reason is, no one knows what this mode is actually used for. We do still get some pitch control, but this actually tucks in these, remember these outboard ailerons are slightly open? If I turn it off again, I wonder if they'll open a bit. Yeah, there you go. So extra stability, and then they can be used for roll. But this creates deflections and seams in the airplane, which can be picked up by enemy radar, which could then see that. So in penetration mode, you don't get any of that. All you can do to steer the airplane now, left and right, is to use differential throttle. So if you have your flight sim set up with the option to do that, you can then command it. We're actually in auto throttle mode here, so if I turn that off, there we go. And now I can steer the airplane. If I bring back the throttles on the left side. Now the real airplane, I have no idea. I would imagine it probably has a system that does this automatically for the pilots, so you wouldn't have to actually manage the throttles individually to steer the airplane, but maybe they would, I don't know. But you can see here, and this has been used. Airplanes that have lost hydraulic systems and therefore flight controls have used differential throttles to get themselves onto the ground and save lives. So it is a thing that can be done. But there you go. So you could manage the throttles. If I bring these left ones all the way back, and remember you have to then counteract with the extra power on the right because you've lost overall thrust. We should see the airplane start to turn. There we go. Look, 324, 323. It stays very flat because the fly-by-wire system is keeping it flat, which is a clever part of this airplane. But there we go. It is now gently moving over. Now, I would imagine the airplane would actually bank slightly, but maybe there's a way they've got around that. So there we go. So let's get those throttles back together. And let's re-engage that and that. Check the outs. Yeah, 3,500 please. Up we go. So I think that's pretty cool. I'm also curious, if we turn off penetration mode, let the airplane use all its systems, we can also if I have like the lights out and on, there they are. So we've got some bits sticking out. What happens if I press penetration now? Does it close all those things up? Yes, it does. Look at that. So, if you were flying into enemy airspace and you happen to forget, you've got all your lights on and out. I wonder as well, does it do it for these doors? So we can open these doors. We're a bit too fast, so it's going to complain.
Warning.
But let's say you've forgotten and you're flying along like this, so the airplane is in a relatively dirty configuration. If you press that, it won't do the engines. Okay, they're more important. But it does clear the lights out. I like that a lot. Nice detail. Again, no one knows really what these systems do, but this is a fun interpretation, I think, of what it could be. So yeah. Right. So we're in penetration mode. Let's turn that off so we have full control of the airplane. And we'll get rid of those lights again. Although actually we're going into civvy airspace now, so we're going to go and land into Kansas City. So I think actually I'll leave those on so people can see us, know that we are actually an airplane and not a UFO. Good stuff. Just before we get there, let's also take a look at what it shows the weapons open. So if I go to weapons, and we can open the doors. Now remember, Microsoft Flight Simulator, I bought this from the Microsoft Flight Simulator store, so I do not get any weapons included. That is a standard thing on Microsoft Flight Simulator store. I'm not entirely sure why. Microsoft once upon a time published Combat Flight Simulator where you would specifically have weapons, but there we go. That's how it is. However, TopMac have very smartly just allowed you to download the mod for free from flightsim.to if you want to have them included. So I think that's a pretty good way around that restriction. Yeah, there we go. Look at that. Fantastic. Let's close those up. They're a bit faster in flight to open and close, which I suppose is quite important, because that you want those open for the minimum amount of time, because whilst those are open, enemy radars can detect it. And there are stories of this happening with other stealth aircraft. It's very interesting if you read about it, but there we go. So now I've engaged navlock in the autopilot. The airplane will fly over to that line. It is effectively the magenta line, and there you can see Kansas City Airport over there. So let's set up an approach, and we'll just fly landing into there, which should be pretty, hopefully, nice long runways to land onto. So okay, MCI, approach. And we'll have, what should we do? That's one left. Looks like a nice long runway. That is, it could be by any of these points. But we're heading north, so one left will be a straight in for us. So you can see here the airplane now heading over to join this line, and then we can actually zoom in on the range like this. So if I go to our nav page, arrival, I believe, are these NFL players? Because Kansas City, of course, I think they won the Super Bowl last year, didn't they? But if we scroll through, just like many airplanes, you can see there's lots of options there. So if we just did that, runway one left, and that's Mahomes. Now I have a lot to learn about the autopilot system. By the way, we're passing through 38,000 feet now, 275 knots, 3,500 feet per minute, just to give you an idea of how powerful this airplane is when it gets up into high altitude. This is where it wants to sit. It is absolutely fantastic at it. But yeah, so what we'll do is I'm just going to radar vector ourselves around and join the ILS for runway one left. We can actually tune it, because you can see if it's tuned by going to the nav page, and then in here we can check that the ILS is tuned. So we want the ILS to be 1105, course 011, and there it is, 110.5. So it did tune it automatically when I selected the approach. So that's very good news. Now let's have a bit of fun getting this airplane to descend. So I'm going to take over from the autopilot. I'm going to take over from the auto throttle. I'm going to bring the throttles to idle. And then I'm going to go full speed brake. Out they come. And then I'm just going to, and you can hear the rumble as that happens. Speed is washing off, and then we can just drop the nose, see if we can get up to 330 knots, get as much drag out of it as possible. We're actually north now of Kansas City Airport. That's over here. So we're going to head downwind and do a left turn and join that ILS. And down we go. Look at that. Holding 260 knots. Fantastic. I think we can drop the nose lower. They are just hugely effective speed brakes. Now, whether the real airplane does this or not, I don't know. But look at this. We can absolutely dive down. And the faster we go, remember, the more drag we'll get. So those speed brakes will become more and more effective the faster we are descending. I'm not sure what the overspeed would be. There's no clear overspeed limit on this altimeter. Again, I'm not sure if that's declassified. Now, as we prepare for the landing, some things we need to remember. We don't have any flaps to deploy. It will just be the landing gear. We'll put out a bit of speed brake once we are on final approach, and then we will use that for stability. And we will fly with our little angle of attack indicator here, this indexer. This will show an amber circle when we're at the right angle of attack. It will give us a little red up arrow when we're too fast and a green down arrow when we're too slow. Now, why it goes green when we're too slow, I don't know, but this is a pretty standard military style of flying a final approach. Remember, they often fly using angle of attack as opposed to airspeed like we do in the civilian world. Right, now we'll gently nose up, already putting 1.6G, which, you know, on a passenger airplane, 1.6G would be very heavy. You'd notice that. Good. Speed is rushing off. 11,000 feet now. Not far away. Speed brake going away. Fantastic. Now we've set up the ILS in the FMC. As we get closer, it will arrive on our PFD. So I think we can level off for now at 10,000 and cruise downwind. Downwind now. Kansas City Airport is over here. We're going to land on runway 1 left. You can see on another display we're heading here and rounding in. We're currently at 8,000 feet, but we are descending down to 4,000 feet to do that. Currently at 250 knots. It's not doing enough of vertical speed. I'm actually going to demand it does a better one. Let's go for minus, and let's do 2,000. And then VS lock. There we go. Now it will dive down a little bit better, down to 4,000 feet, and we can go over there and join the ILS. I can use this heading selector just to move the heading rounds. Oh, there we go. And get us towards a better position to intercept that ILS. That's a range of 40 miles, that's a 20-mile ring, so good stuff. Right, let's run our checklist now. So let's do what's quite cool is cruise and air-to-air refueling checks. Descent checklist, hydraulic systems are all good, fuel CG is good, landing data altimeters are all good. We're not worried about icing, great stuff. Let's go to the approach and landing. So altimeters, we're on the QNH. Localizer frequency is set, and you can now see, as we get close to the airport, it's picking up the localizer and glide slope. You can see that we're obviously above the glide slope. So as expected. So that's good. Next step is landing gear lever down once we're on the glide slope. So that's all we need to do next, and then we can put on our landing lights. So let's just get ourselves over onto that ILS. Passing through 6,000 feet now, doing 2,000 feet per minute. Bring the nose round. You do get used to this. The only thing I need to learn how to do is to properly fly direct to waypoints. I don't know how I could get it to fly in a nav mode direct to GERLD. I'm sort of having to do it in heading. I'm sure there is a way, but I don't personally know it. Now, I've never been to Kansas. I'm not sure what this is out the window. Is that a racetrack? Is that NASCAR? I don't know. Big, big, big events area there. The scale of stadiums and so on in America always amazes me. There we go. Right, let's now bring the nose round. Oh, we're below the glide slope. Nose round. And hopefully I can convince it to join the ILS. I might have left this a little bit late. So do a sharp intercept there. And then if I press, I can go to here and press approach. There's the localizer. See, you bring approach and then you get the localizer scales. It's gone through the localizer. So let's fly it manually. Autopilot's disconnected. Bring the nose round. It's a very stable airplane. It's not something to be afraid of hand flying this airplane, so we'll do it all manually. Brave statement of me to say that now just before I go and fly a raw data ILS in it, but there we go. So let's bring the speed back. We can be doing about 230 knots at this point. Keep it around 4,000 feet. So to do that, I can just keep the bird, this flight path vector, on the horizon, and the airplane shouldn't descend. Bringing the nose round. It's a military airplane. We're not worried about people spilling gin and tonics. And I've got my ILS course bar down here, so I just go back onto an intercept heading from this direction. We are visual, so we can descend down. Let's go down to 3,000 feet to continue this. Powering back, 230 knots. Remember, we're actually going to slow all the way down to our approach speed without adding any flaps into the picture. So it's a, there we go, localizer now coming back in. So let's get the nose back round. That was a little bit too aggressive of a cut I did there. Quite thermally, quite turbulent here. I wonder if this airplane's quite efficient. I wonder if it could pick up thermals and so on quite easily. Wouldn't be surprised. There we go. We'll visual the runway now. We've got arriving on the just off the localizer. Got the glides up here. So now let's put that flight path vector somewhere around 3 degrees descent. 220 knots. So we're going to power back now. Let the airplane wash off the airspeed. So if we look over here, landing gear goes down next, then we'll put the lights on, then we're going to put 50% speed brakes and get the angle of attack to 5 degrees. So we're going to stabilize it around there. The approach speed is between 150 and 175 knots. So that's what we're aiming for. And again, remember, we were 330 knots in this configuration, and now we're doing 200 knots, and it's totally fine. So let's drop the gear. It always gives us that gear unsafe while it's transiting as a warning. Let's get 50% speed brake out. We're getting a bit high on that glide slope, so we just need to nose down, make sure we keep up with it, and I'm just going to power all the way back now and try and come back to our approach speed. You can see our angle of attack indices has come to life now. So speed brake coming out, 50%, so there it is, somewhere around there. It's very effective, as we've seen. We're on the glide slope again, so let's get our descent rate under control. And speed is washing back through 180 knots. And I'm expecting it to sit around 150 to 175, but mainly I'm looking for an angle of attack that puts me in that circle in the middle there. And remember, you don't need to retrim it. The airplane is, you just point the nose where you want it. It's incredibly satisfying. So now starting to bring the power back on. There's the green circle. So green circle is what we want. So as the nose comes up, we hit the green circle. So now I need to keep adding power. We don't want to get too slow, because soon it will put that red down arrow on us, meaning we are slow. There it is. That means you're too slow. So power on, power on, power on, power on. Don't get any slower. Now we're too fast. It's a strange sensation at first, but we're on glide slope. We're on 3 degrees. We're a bit too fast now, so powering back. Here we go. So the next step is we're going to land 4 to 5 degrees on final approach, and then we're going to touch down, idle as we cross the inner marker, touch down, and then go full speed brake. Okay, getting far too high on the glide slope. So nose down, powering back. Remember, with those speed brakes out, we get quite a good amount of drag out of it. Still a bit fast, back on the glide slope. A little bit of power on now, stabilizing again at 150-ish. And now idling as we cross the outer marker. Got a bit of extra energy in here. And then we're going to flare around about 5 to 6 degrees in the flare for touchdown. So idle power, into the flare, there's touchdown. Deploying full speed brake now. And then gently lowering the nose. There it is. And the nose, it sits very nose high. You'll see that nose gear is almost down. So if we apply the brakes, there we go. Nose gear down as well. And she's rolling out in Kansas City. How cool is that? You get a lot of drag with that nose up on landing, so it actually slows down nicely, even without getting those speed brakes and no reverse or anything like that. And there we go, parking brake set. Welcome to Kansas. So that's all for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. A really fascinating airplane. I've had a huge amount of fun learning what I can about it and taking it into the air. It's such a cool airplane to get to fly around in the skies. So really nice work by Mach Studios. I will certainly be looking out at their other airplanes because this is a remarkably good military add-on. I haven't seen many military add-ons. Well, there are some excellent ones out there now for Microsoft Flight Simulator, and this is up there with the best of them. It is really super, and it's just such a fascinating airplane. I could look at it all day, and I think they've really captured some of those unique systems, having those opening doors on the engines, you know, the bomb bay doors, the penetration mode, the way the flight control systems works. It's all here, and plus it looks gorgeous from any angle. That's all then for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. More live streams, guides, and videos to come in the future, so do please subscribe if you'd like to see more. We'll see you again in another of those videos. Thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye.